What's up, everybody, and welcome back to First Round Frenzy. Matt and Cole here. Last time we talked about the combine recap, our winners and losers. Today we are doing our mock draft 2.0. So last time Cole had the odds, I had the evens. We're going to switch it up. I've got the odds, Cole's got the evens, and there's been a lot of news over the past few days. Trade rumors, free agency rumors, some players have already been re signed and traded. So we'll get into those as each of those teams come up. But first, we're going to get started here. I've got the Tennessee Titans with the number one pick on the draft. And this one's tough for me. Personally, I think this pick is going to get traded. I think the Giants are most likely going to swoop in. Now, there have been rumors that they're going after Kyler Murray and potentially going after a veteran here. But Brian Dabble and Joe Schoen are very, very they need this. They're desperate. They're desperate for a quarterback. I think they're going to trade. But I think no matter what, the choice for the Titans is going to be the same. It's Abdul Carter or a quarterback. It's Cam Ward if they stay at one. It's whoever's available if they're at three. If one of the top two are available, I think they go with it at three. For now, since I have them at one, I'm going to go with Abdul Carter. We're going to stick with exactly what we started with last time. I think they're going to stick with the Will Levis. I think they're probably going to go. I think all three teams in the AFC South are improving. I think they're still going to be one of the worst teams in the league next year, no matter what they do, whether they get a quarterback or not. So they're going to go into next year with a lot more quarterback options. Some are saying most of them are going to be better than even Cam Ward. They're going to take their shot next year and maybe go and sign a Justin Fields or Daniel Jones or something like that potentially to compete with Will Levis this year.
Yeah, could be a good move. I think Abdul Carter is the best player that they can get, even with the medicals that popped up last week. I mean, just in terms of the quarterback class this year, it's not really inspiring guys to be a leader right out of the gate and a franchise quarterback right out of the gate. And that's what the Titans need, and they can't find it here. So just get a franchise best guy on the board.
Yeah.
No harm, no foul there. I will go QB here, though, for the Cleveland Browns at two. I personally like Cam Ward over Shedeur Sanders. But I think if there's a team that would draft Shedeur, it would be the Browns. Based on the top teams that met with him at the combine, I mean, there's mixed reviews from the meetings that were with Shedeur Sanders of how people felt about him, just how he came across as a person, and the personality. But on the field, both guys are pretty similar, but I like Cam Ward here, having a higher potential of leading this Browns team in 2025 and beyond once they get off Deshaun Watson's contract at the end of this year. So
So
I
we're
think he
going,
can be a future guy for this. So I'm going to take Cam Ward at number two.
yeah. And I think it's going to be interesting, and it's all going to come down to what the Giants do and whether they trade up. Because I think based on reports I'm hearing, they like Cam Ward better than Shador. We don't know. There's a lot of smoke at this time and whatever. But I think if they end up trading up, I think Cam's gone at this point. I do still think they end up going quarterback, though, either way, the Browns. Now, the Giants, they get the guy that they want falling into their lap here at three. Or actually, yeah, get the guy that they want falling into their lap. That's going to be Shedeur Sanders here. They want a quarterback. They want one of the two. I think Cam Ward would have been the preference. But as I said, Joe Schoen and Brian Dabble are desperate. Obviously, this is not taking into account them potentially going and trading for Kyler Murray, which is, if the Cardinals even decide to trade Kyler Murray, which I'm thinking is very unlikely. But there are some rumors that he could be on the move. But I think no matter what, the Giants go quarterback here. There's really not much that they can do. I think even if they go out and get Rodgers, they want Shador to sit behind him and potentially take some time, learn behind him. And I think Shador Sanders is the move here.
All right. So the Patriots, I think, are the first interesting pick because they have their quarterback in Drake May. They don't have a lot else.
Yeah.
They need defense. They need a potential two-way guy in Travis Hunter, a wide receiver, cornerback hybrid. You already have your lockdown corner in Christian Gonzalez. You're not having to ask Travis Hunter to play that role, but they need a special weapon on offense. Demario Douglas is your number one receiver last year in terms of receiving yards. And I think Hunter Henry was the one that actually led the team in receiving yards. So we've talked about Ted McMillan here. We've talked about Travis Hunter here. I think they need help on the offensive line. I think Will Campbell is a good spot, but I do want to take Travis Hunter here. I mean, you take the special players early in this draft, and you can't miss out on a talent like that. Two-way guy who fits both, what they need on offense and what they need on offense or on defense, and you can have them play both ways at a high level for the Patriots.
Yeah, I think the Patriots would be lucky to get Travis at this spot. I mean, we talk about the Browns and the Giants both going quarterback here. Both of them could easily go Travis Hunter as well, depending on what they do in free agency. But the Patriots, I mean, they've got so many different holes on this team. They could really go anything with this pick. So I like the Travis Hunter pick there. Um, Now, here for the Jaguars, this is another interesting team. I think they've got a lot of holes with high quality players available here. They can go improve the offensive line for Trevor Lawrence, go and get a Will Campbell or an Armand Membu. They could go and get Will Johnson, a top corner, to go and put on that defense. But I think you've got to go with my third best player in this class, best player available, and that's Mason Grimm. I think, when you're looking at this, the new general manager comes in here, history with the Rams, drafting high, all their first round, their last three first and second round picks have all been defensive linemen with the Rams. So I think he's going to come in here, get the number one defensive lineman on the board, improve that pass rush, improve that run defense, and just have a really, really solid defensive front heading into next season.
Yeah, and I know Gladstone talked a lot about, building that offensive line back up in Jacksonville and, targeting some of those guys. I don't think he targets them in the first round though. I think, like you said, coming from the Rams, a team that value or that, strategizes finding value players
Yep.
and all the value players that he helped find in Los Angeles. You don't really have to take a massive shot with your top pick on your need if you feel like that's your need. So I'm still leaning with that too. I think Mason Graham's the best fit for Jacksonville at 5. So 6, let me get caught up here. Um, on my list. All right, there we go. The Raiders. This is interesting too. Don't really like how this fell for the Raiders. I know last time I think we had Shadur fall at 6. They kind of put themselves in a bind. No quarterback. Um,
Now there's Jackson Dart.
let's see. I do. Let me look at the board here. I like some of the tackles for the Raiders. I think they need to build up the offensive line. And I guess with Will Campbell on the board, you have to take him. Um, they need a mauler in the run game. They need someone to protect the quarterback, and Will Campbell's the best one on the board. So I'm gonna go with him with the Raiders just because how this board fell. Because I like Shadur, I like Mason Graham, and both those guys off the board already when we get to 6.
Yeah, I think the Raiders are going to be an interesting team. They're another team that could potentially trade up to one of those top three picks. Um, I think it's looking less and less likely that they're able to get in there because I think if the Titans want to trade, they're still going to want to get Abdul Carter at 3 if they can. I'm hearing a lot of Ashton Genty at 6 potentially, as well as Tet McMillan potentially getting some just offensive weapons in there. But building from the trenches is obviously key, and I think that's a good pick. But the Raiders are known for wasting first round picks, so we'll see what they do here and if they make another mistake. Now, my team, New York Jets. We were talking about this earlier. I personally think they're going to go Jackson Dart. I'm not going to pick him here. This is just because it's not what I'm hearing. I just have a personal fear that we're going to go with another top 10 quarterback that is potentially not going to work. But we've got so many other holes. And I think what we do here, I believe we had Tyler Warren going last time, but with a defensive minded head coach coming in, I think we're going to stick on that side of the ball. He wants a leader on that defense. We just lost DJ Reed. I'm going to go with one of my favorite players in the draft, and that's Jahdae Barron out of Texas. I think it's a rogue pick, but he seems like a guy that Aaron Glenn would love to have on his defense. He's a guy that can play outside. He's a guy that can play inside. He can even play safety if needed. He's a good tackler. He's a leader. He's outspoken. And right now, the Jets are in trouble. They're not looking good. A lot of people are on the team in the locker room are not very happy right now with how things are going. And I think bringing in an outspoken guy, a guy that has had success in postseason college football so far, is a guy that would bring a lot of value to this team.
Yeah, I mean it's your guy, your team. If you can make that dream happen, yeah, I
Yep,
do
I'm
not
gonna
put it
do it.
past you making that dream happen.
I'm gonna make the dream happen. You know, it might not happen, but I believe, and that's what I want at 7 right now.
All right. So Carolina, I've been on this the whole time. I'm not going to come off of it.
Yep.
Um, I guess I have him listed at linebacker. Yeah, linebacker. Jalen Walker.
Yep. Same
He's
with me.
been connected. The athletic guys from Carolina were continuing on the links to Jalen Walker after the combine with Carolina. I think he fits a lot of what they want on defense. They need a top tier edge rusher again. And Jalen Walker, we talked about him. He can do both. He's a little undersized. He can play off ball, or he can play down and play off the edge as well if he adds some more pounds to him. So I like what he can do in Carolina. It fits a lot of needs that they have on that defense and gives them a highly athletic player to utilize for the next couple of years.
Yeah. I like that. I've had him in all my mock drafts as well. With the Panthers,
Yeah.
it just seems like the right pick there. Um, Best player available on the board most likely, and he fits a major need. The Saints are an interesting one. I've heard a lot of different things here. I've heard them potentially going corner with Will Johnson, heard them going Tet McMillan, wide receiver. I've heard Ashton Genty to get another running back in there. And the Saints are an interesting team. And I think they end up going Tyler Warren here. I think they want to go out there, get a weapon. It could be Tet McMillan, go and get a wide receiver, but I think they want, a dark horse here. And I think Tyler Warren falling down to number 9 is a steal for this team. And they usually go, at least what we've seen from the Saints in the past, is they go and get their guy, right? They don't usually go best player available. They go with the best player available on their board. And I think Tyler Warren is going to be in a lot of people's top 5 prospects going into this. Tight end is a position of need. He's a guy that can block. He's a guy that can get a screen behind the line of scrimmage, get you yards after the catch, or he can go and run the seam. So I think overall, he's probably the best player available right now. And he's going to make an immediate impact to this offense, especially if they end up going Spencer Rattler as their starting QB. Tight end is their best friend. Young QB's best friend is a good tight end, and that's what they're going to do and get Tyler Warren for him.
Yeah, the Saints are always an unpredictable team. Every year trying to mock them. I have no idea what they're going to do. I don't think I've ever mocked them correctly. It's like the one team that always has a high pick and just blows my top 10 out of the water
Yep.
every year. So glad you got to pick them this time around and figure out the needs that they might go with. But I do know the Chicago Bears.
Yep.
And after making 2 big moves at guard, I do think they're going to go out quick and get a top center as soon as free agency opens and just kind of shore up all their needs. I think a reunion with Khalil Mack might be a possibility to shore up that need at the defensive end. All I know is by April, the Bears are going to have all their top needs filled one way or another. And they're going to be sitting here at 10 and just wait for the best player to fall in their lap. And that player on our list right now is Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty already met with the Bears at the combine. He already met with Caleb Williams, a couple months ago, was hanging out with him he posted on his Instagram story, them two hanging out. And Brian Poles talked about adding to the backfield. They're going to meet again for a top 30 visit coming up. And, all the writing's on the wall. If this team and the board falls this way and this team nails all the needs they have before April's draft, they're going to take Ashton Genty.
Yep.
If he's sitting there, it's going to happen. If everything else lines up, makes sense, this is the right move for the future of this offense. Having him and Caleb Williams in that Ben Johnson offense is going to be incredible.
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense. Ben Johnson loves to use his running backs. They obviously have a very good receiving core, building up their O line right now. Their defense isn't the worst in the league. It makes sense to get Caleb Williams as many weapons as you can to take the load off. Now, the 49ers are an interesting team. Obviously, the big news, they just traded Deebo Samuel away, and they're potentially, hasn't been confirmed yet, signing Brock Purdy to a major deal, over $45 million. I believe the first offer is 45. We'll see if he accepts that or if he pumps it up. We'll see. But I think right now, based on how last season went, you're potentially trading Brandon Ayuk. You already traded Deebo Samuel. The offense didn't look nearly as good as it did the year prior. Maybe it's because McCaffrey was injured. Maybe it's because people were injured all over. Losing Deebo Samuel, Huge. So they're going to go and try to get someone to replace Debo Samuel. It could be Tet McMillan, but he's not the same kind of player. But the guy that is the same kind of player is Luther Burden III out of Missouri. Guy that can, be a gadget player, play out of the slot, catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage, make plays with the ball in his hand, and he can go downfield and make plays as well. He's not my favorite receiver in the draft. I think we've talked about this on the show before. I like Emeka Egbuka. I like Matthew Golden. I think Matthew Golden has moved up boards a lot. But Luther Burden gives me the most similarities to Debo Samuel. And I think that's what they're looking for, a younger and less expensive Debo Samuel. And that's what they're going to do at 11.
Nice. Our first receiver off the board finally,
Yep.
outside the top 10. So the
Fine.
Dallas Cowboys, hmm. So they said they're not going to spend much in free agency, but yet they're freeing up a lot of money right now. Dak Prescott just restructured this week and opened up a lot of money in
So
their
did
cap
CD.
space with that restructure. But the problem now is, are they going to pay Micah Parsons with that money? And that's where I'm winning with this pick because I want to lean Jahad Campbell and have him as like the replacement to Micah Parsons for this defense. But at the same time, I don't know what's going to go on in that secondary. There's talks that Trayvon Diggs might get released. They could go corner. They need some upgrades at safety. I could, go off a whim and get Nick Emanori here off the board and just rip him right now. But I think, what I have penciled in right now on my mock, working mock is Jahad Campbell and just what this guy can do. Yeah, they have him listed, as an inside linebacker, but his pass rush traits are incredible. And he was, the absolute freak of the combine. And, this guy, if they get rid of Micah Parsons, that defense won't miss a beat. And this guy, he has Matt Eberflus written all over him.
He's a beast. He obviously had a great combine, and we've talked about it before. We were talking about it. He's a guy that started off as an edge rusher, also an inside linebacker now, so he can do everything. So even if they do re-sign Micah Parsons to a big deal, I mean, them together would be an insane duo in that defense there. Now the Dolphins are an interesting team. I think they can go to a bunch of different directions. Obviously, they could go and get a safety, Malachi Starks, Nicky Manwari there, but I think their biggest need is offensive line. They're going to go out and get a guy that has been getting a lot of hype recently, can play guard, can play tackle, and that is going to be Armand Membu out of Missouri. I've drafted two Missouri players here in the top 13 of my picks. I love what I saw out of Armand Membu at the combine. I think his tape is elite. He's going into that top 3, top 2 offensive tackle conversation. I think a lot of teams really like his athleticism coupled with his size, even though it is a little bit undersized. But I think he's a guy that's going to fit perfectly in that offense. You could go Tyler Booker, you could go to get a true guard, but I think the versatility of Membu and the athleticism of Membu gives a little bit more value here. And they get a guy that they can plug, at whatever spot on the offensive line they feel is the biggest need.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I mean, I had them. I think I took Mbu last time to Miami. It's a good fit there. I think when it's all said and done, I think Mbu might be a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
The rise he had after the combine, he's starting to enter in that conversation. And, still taking him at 3 is good, or 13 is good value. But once we get closer, and, if I have a pick where I like him next time we do a mock draft, maybe post free agency or right before the draft, I think Mbu starts entering that conversation and it's probably gone even before the 10th selection. So
I was
well, I
I was
think
gonna
he's
say I
a
was
quick
considering him
rider.
with the Jets. I was considering
Yeah.
him at that Jets pick. I had to get my guy though.
All right. Well, you took my guy for the Colts, so I'm going to go with the second best available tight end, and Colson Loveland, because we both know both guys are going
Yeah.
in the first round, and we both know that the Colts are, enamored with both of them, and they're fine with whichever one's on the board, and ideally would like to make that decision for themselves between Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland. But either way, they need a big body in this offense to help Anthony Richardson grow or whatever quarterback they bring in to compete. And Colson Loveland isn't the inline tight end you want, but as in the slot as a pass catching option and the size he has, that's a mismatch waiting to happen with Michael Pittman on the outside as well. And the speed they have in that wide receiver room, he'd be a great addition to their offense.
Yeah. And we've heard pretty much this entire offseason so far, they've been talking about getting Anthony Richardson a competitor at the quarterback position. So if Anthony Richardson wants to win this quarterback competition, he's going to need help. And as I talked about with the Saints, get a young quarterback, a competent tight end, because he'll be able to help a lot. Now, the Falcons are a really interesting team here. Because, I mean, it's a team need. I don't know if it's the first team need, but according to PFF here, the number one team need is wide receiver. They could go out and get Tet McMillan, and Mika Ibuka, or Matthew Golden. All three still available. But I think at this time, they're going to go out and they're going to go get an edge rusher, improve that defense a little bit. I think they're going to be in the conversation for some wide receivers during free agency. And I think on day 2, they're going to be going out and looking for some wide receivers because I think the wide receivers are dropping a little bit. Where, obviously I chose Luther Burden there, but I think we're going to see Tet McMillan drop. I think we're going to see a Mika and Matthew Golden potentially drop. So there are going to be some guys available at the top end of the second round. So then it comes to the conversation, what do we do here? Is it James Pierce Jr.? Is it Mike Green? Is it Shamar Stewart? Because we've been hearing a lot about Shamar Stewart. I'm going James Pierce. I think James Pierce is the best edge rusher available at the time. I think in terms of actual play, he has the least amount of question marks. Obviously, there's the off the field questions that we have. And at the end of the day, I think it's Mike Green or James Pierce. It's just which off the field issues do they have the least amount of problems with? And they're going to go with that guy because I think either one of them are a good pick. At this moment, I'm going James Pierce, but I think it's probably going to be Mike Green or James Pierce if they're both available at this time.
Yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense. Well, you put it right up on the tee for me with the Cardinals. Their number one need and the guy that's on the board right there in front of them is Tyler Booker. Matt, you know how much of a mauler this guy can
Oh,
be,
yeah.
and in the run offense, the Kyler Murray rumors are out there, but keeping Kyler Murray, having that two-headed, backfield, you need a mauler in the run game at that guard position. Tyler Booker is the best available, and I love this fit. This is one I have penciled in already. I'm gonna probably ride with it the whole way unless he catches some more steam. But in terms of his slotting, his slot range in the draft, I don't know that he goes as high as the top 15, but he's going to be right there, borderline that in that first round. So I think 16 is good value for him. The Cardinals get a guy that fits up, their biggest need on offense.
Yeah, I like Tyler Booker 16 there. I think there's a chance he goes to the Bears. I think he's a chance he goes to the Dolphins or the Colts. But I think most likely he's going to get outside that top 15, and the Cardinals are going to jump right over that. 17, I'm going to go with a guy that so far I've had the entire time, and that's going to be Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. I've been seeing a lot that he's dropping a little bit in the last few mock drafts that I've looked at. He's been in kind of that 20s range, but I still think he's a guy that can be effective in the run game. His best trait is his pass rushing ability. And I think he's a guy that can go in and, dominate on that defensive front. We saw that Sam Hubbard just retired. Obviously, J.J. Watt is no longer going to the Bengals after Burnley didn't have a clean sheet this past weekend. So, they need help on that defensive front. And I was considering Will Johnson because he's still out there. And I was considering going safety with Starks or Eman Worry. But as we've been a theme talking about this for the past few weeks, building from the trenches is key. And they're going to go out, get someone on defense that's going to be a leader. And apparently the next Aaron Donald.
Yeah, maybe they definitely need help on that defense. I mean, with all the talks always on the offensive line, but I don't think that was necessarily the issue last year. Their defense needs more playmakers first and foremost, and that needs to be the priority. They got T. Higgins back. They're hopefully going to, get the whole gang back together on offense. It's a good pickup on defense. Ted McMillan is interesting. With the news we heard that, what the time of this recording, Tyler Lockett's out of Seattle. DK Metcalf has opened the door to potentially be out of Seattle. So I'm going to get Ted McMillan here with the trio of Ted McMillan, JSN, and Jake the Legend Bobo as the new trio for Geno Smith in this offense. But Ted McMillan, he's the only alpha in my, rankings that fits that mold. And losing DK, he's the alpha of all alphas for an offense. And if you trade him away, you need to replace him with someone soon, or you're just going to force feed every target to JSN out of the slot. So I like Ted McMillan, especially after all the news we heard today with Tyler Lockett leaving and DK potentially being on the move. He fits the direction they're trying to go with, younger, faster on offense.
Yep. I mean, that makes complete sense, especially if DK leaves, going out, getting a physical, big wide receiver just makes all the sense in the world. Now, I'm telling you right now, the Bucks are looking at this board and, just looking up at the sky and thanking God right now. Because now they have the opportunity to take four of the best players, defensive players in this draft, whether it's Malachi Starks, Nicky Manwari, Mike Green, or Will Johnson. Alt needs, you know, obviously its defense was a question mark last year, especially in the playoffs. And one of the reasons why it was a question mark is because they were extremely light in the secondary. We saw their number one corner go down in the second half, I believe it was, of the playoff game, and that hurt them a lot. So, with Will Johnson dropping all the way to 19, I'm going to go and take a lot of people's number one corner in this class. He ends up dropping. Maybe you could say edge rusher is a bigger need, but you need a guy that can go and lock down on an island. Him and McCullum on the outside would be a very good cornerback duo. And I think you'll be able to get more quality edge rushers and defensive linemen later in the draft than you will be able to get quality corners. So you're going to go out there, get arguably the best corner in this entire draft at 19, extreme value. I believe I've got him in my top 7 or 8 players in this draft right now at my current big board. So huge value for them at 19.
Yeah, pretty good. The Broncos, man, all the Jokers are off the board. I wouldn't say you took them because I took two of them. I like Ashton Genty. I ripped him really early at 10 to the Bears. Colson Loveland, Tyler Warren's up, both off the board, starting to get some of the wide receivers out there. And I'm not liking kind of some of the fits here. Ah, man, I don't want to take Amari and Hampton this high.
Two UNC running backs in that running back room.
Yeah, I mean they are going to lose Javante, it seems like in
Oh
free
yeah,
agency.
yeah.
Um, I'm going to beef up the secondary with Nicky Manori. As they want the Joker on offense, I'm gonna go with the Joker on defense instead. This guy in that secondary, they need a beast back there with Pat Surtain, the reigning defensive player of the year at corner. Get a guy at safety that can reach that kind of a level, in my opinion. What he showed at the combine was incredible, a do-it-all player, and this guy is going to be a beast in that division, which could get DK if he goes to the Chargers. A big wide receiver they got to go up against. And then, I mean, the other teams, the Raiders and the Chiefs in that division, that secondary is going to absolutely dominate those two offenses.
Yeah, 100%. And Nicky Manwar is another guy that could potentially go to the Colts at 14. Guy I was considering with the Bucks as well at 19. So a couple options for him there, but he falls to the Broncos. That'd be huge. Steelers are another interesting team. Do they go Jackson Dart? Do they go wide receiver? For me, they go wide receiver. And it's one of my favorite players in the draft, and that's Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. I think he fills a major need. All we've been hearing this entire process is he is a pro's pro. He's, always doing the right thing, always doing that. And it seems like it's the exact opposite of George Pickens. So you get that to counteract George Pickens, give another weapon in that offense to whoever is the quarterback this coming year, whether it's someone they draft later on or if it's a veteran that they bring in free agency, whatever it is, Emeka Egbuka fills a major need for them as, him and Pickens could be a very, very interesting wide receiver duo.
Yeah, it seems like the Steelers are always in on every wide receiver that is, rumored to go anywhere, and they always strike out time and time again of landing one. So at some point, they just got to pull the trigger and get one by themselves in the draft. So they need to make sure that happens this year if they can't land someone before then. The Chargers is interesting. They need an alpha wide receiver. There's none of those on the board right now after Ted McMillan goes off. I'm gonna go with an edge. You got to replace, Khalil Mack, who's probably going to leave in free agency. They're going to want to try to get him back. I don't think it'll happen. Joey Bosa, his future isn't even that long term there as well. I'm going to go with Shamar Stewart. I'm going to bank on the athleticism. The Chargers like doing that. This is someone where the production's not there, but I'm sure, Jim Harbaugh is probably looking at that guy at the combine and absolutely tear it up and say, of anyone that can replace Khalil Mack, this might be the guy that can do it measurably, athleticism wise. And they just hope the production comes. It didn't happen in the college level. They hope it comes in the NFL level.
Yeah. And now we got your Green Bay Packers. Well, it's interesting because, it seems like they're going to get a wide receiver through trade potentially. We got Brandon Ayuk, we got DK Metcalf available, and they're in the conversations. Not necessarily saying they're going to get them, but they're in the conversations for one of those two guys potentially. And it'll be interesting to see because when we were talking about the DK Metcalf trade a few days ago, people were saying that the Packers might have to give up this first round pick. So we'll see if they even have this. I don't think they'll have to. I would hope that they wouldn't have to give up a first round pick, but it'll be interesting. But they've got a few options here. I think for me, I'm going to go with a guy that's dropped significantly, and that's Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. I think he's a guy that can play inside. He's a guy that can play outside. He played extremely well at the combine, and he's another guy that some people are saying is potentially a top 10 pick, depending on how things go. We're talking about him potentially at the Bears earlier on this season. I think he's dropped a little bit, but if he's here at 23, you're getting a potential all-pro offensive lineman here, and I think it just makes sense at this point. There are some other options. You can go to the defensive line, get Kenneth Grant potentially as well. But I think going out there, getting another versatile offensive lineman is going to be key. And he's going to be a guy that can pretty much do anything you need.
Yeah, I mean, I hate going first round, especially the late first round with the Packers. I mean, Jordan Morgan, we're going to see him be a starter in 2027 after taking him in the first round last year. But they do need tackle help. And especially even if you can move him inside or wherever you want to move him around, Brian Gutekunst likes those guys that you can move around and you just build the offensive line however the pieces fall, and with different situations. With Minnesota, they have an interesting offseason in front of them just in terms of how they're going to retain their own guys. Um, and how they want to build this offense going forward. Do they bring Aaron Jones back? What do they do with Sam Darnold? Are they going to roll with JJ McCarthy? Either way, I'm going to attack the defense. I think their edges are fine. I'm going to go with the interior and Kenneth Grant, a Michigan guy. Team him up with Brian Flores' scheme. Um, they haven't heard a lot about him. Both Michigan guys kind of had a quiet combine. I like Derek Harmon. I like Darius Alexander and how they performed. But you just go with the tape. Kenneth Grant, he looked pretty dominant, especially playing next to Mason Graham, and that's something that the energy and the effort is something that Brian Flores is going to like for his defense on the interior.
Yeah. And Kenneth Grant's a guy that, maybe a little bit overshadowed by Mason Graham. I've seen some people even have Kenneth Grant ranked above Mason Graham in some of their defensive line rankings. So he's a guy, if he drops this low, be a huge pickup for a team that needs some help on that defensive line. And, as we talked about, Brian Flores is one of the most genius defensive coordinators in the league when it comes to blitzing and disguising coverages, everything. Get a guy like Kenneth Grant in the middle of that. It's perfect. All right, so now we're moving on. Texans. Interesting team. Just heard the news that Tank Dell potentially out for the 2025 season due to him potentially getting ACL surgery. We'll see if that actually happens or not. So that opens up the floor for a few options here. Do they go wide receiver? Matthew Golden is available here. I think we've been talking a lot about them potentially going offensive line. And I'm a little conflicted here. I think I'm going to stick with what I did last time, and that's Gray Zabel out of NDSU. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think they have him as an offensive tackle on here. Yes, they do. And I think it makes a lot of sense. He's extremely versatile. He can play across the line no matter where you want him, whether it's center, guard, or tackle. And, they need to protect CJ Stroud. They need to. That was a huge issue this past season. And although they are losing Steph Diggs, most likely, they're potentially losing Tank Dell. I think that's something that they can potentially fix later on in this draft. And I think Gray Zabel is a huge team need. He's obviously shown out. He's proven he can play, and he's going to be a first-round pick, and I think the Texans are the perfect landing spot for him.
Well, the Rams are interesting. They are going to have Matthew Stafford back for at least 1 year. And it seemed like Les Snead this week talked about wanting to have a quarterback ready to go behind him. And that's not Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think I'm going to pull the trigger on Jackson Dart.
Ooh.
We're hearing more and more after the combine. This guy, he's going to go potentially in the first round. I've never been a fan of it, but I think in a perfect situation, and there's no better perfect situation than being with Sean McVay and sitting for a year behind Matthew Stafford and then taking over as the Rams starting quarterback. This guy looked good. He threw the ball well during the combine and honestly was one of the best throwers at the combine of the guys who actually threw the ball, and that helped him out a lot building his stock up. And if he's sitting here on the board, the Rams got to really consider this. They want to do this song and dance every year with Matthew Stafford. You might just get your guy now and be ready to roll with him next year as your starting quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I was considering tackle here potentially with Josh Simmons still on the board. But I mean, you explain it, it makes perfect sense here. Matthew Stafford, 38 years old. He's probably here for next year, maybe the year after, depending on how things go. And I think it makes perfect. I believe Jackson Dart is 22 at this point. So on the younger side of the quarterbacks in this class, I believe there's only one that's younger than him. So, having him sit behind for a year, even two, would be great because he is a developmental guy. He's not a guy that's most likely going to be ready either way, but we saw the flashes. He can play, he can ball out. So we'll see. Sitting behind Matthew Stafford would be a great person to learn from. Now, the Ravens, another interesting team. Um, I think I got exactly what I needed here. I think I was going to go with whoever was available between Malachi Starks and Nick Manworthy. And Malachi Starks is available. So I'm going to go with him. I mean, we see that the safety position continues to not gain traction in front offices. We saw Brian Branch fall to the second round. We're talking about one of Nick Manworthy and Malachi Starks potentially dropping out of the first round this year. They're potentially both top 15 players in this class. I think we've talked about this a lot. They're extremely talented. Nick Manworthy obviously dominated the physical part of the combine. Malachi Starks dominated the field work drills, and they both have elite tape. So I think you go here, safety might not be the biggest position of need for the Ravens, but pairing him with Kyle Hamilton in the back of that defense, I mean, come on. It would be a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks to kind of figure out what they're doing back there. So, it's best player available for them. They obviously do a really good job developing defensive players, so why not go and get one of the best ones available?
Yeah, secondary is always a go-to. When in doubt, go to the secondary with the Baltimore Ravens. So the Lions, I want to rip Jalen Milroe. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do
I
it.
was like, whoa,
I'm going to
you
go to
already
the
got Hendon
defense.
Hooker. Calm
I
down.
just don't know if I like Mike Green or if I like Donovan Izaraku to come off the edge. Aiden Hutchinson's going to get paid. They got Zadarius Smith. I don't know if they really feel like they need to get super aggressive and go for Myles Garrett to supercharge that defense and get them to a Super Bowl. But I do think a Donovan Izaraku makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think they're going to deal with all the off the field stuff with Mike Green as much as I liked him. But he's as clean of a prospect, behind Mike Green as you can get. He still had, 16 plus sacks this past season, was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He still fits everything that Dan Campbell was going to like on his defensive line, and pairing him with Aiden Hutchinson for the next couple of years gives them two strong edge rushers, and they don't have to worry about that position again.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, you could go offensive line potentially on the interior, but I think when they saw Aiden Hutchinson go down, that defense fell apart. So getting another guy that can pressure the quarterback is going to be key for them. Now, the Commanders are an interesting one. I was considering wide receiver before they made the trade, obviously, for Debo. And I think at this point, I'm going to go corner. And the question is which one? I think Trey Amos, Maxwell Harrison, Shavon Revel, and Darian Porter are all really good options here. Um, and I think I'm going to go Shavon Revel. I like Maxwell Harrison better, but I think the team need is a good physical corner, tall, a guy that can press. I think that is what they're looking for at this point, compared to just a pure speed guy. I think obviously things can change if the medicals for Shavon Revel don't look good at pro days, or whatever leading up to leading up to the draft. But I think he's a very underrated guy because of the injury. We've talked about this a lot. Benjamin Morrison is another option. I think he's one of my favorites. Could have gone him there as well. But I think Siobhan Revel makes the most sense in terms of team need for them.
Yeah, I think I had that last time in our first mock. I like the pairing of him and Mike Sandstrill at corner for that defense. They tried with Marshawn Lattimore to get a physical corner. They just got a physical corner who gets bodied every time he gets in a physical altercation with a wide receiver.
Yep. Yep.
So you get a different physical corner who can actually keep up with some big guys and Siobhan Rebel. So I like that. The Buffalo Bills, my guy's right there on the board. I have seen him linked to multiple times. I like him for the Packers. You went offensive line. So Derek Harmon, and they need a physical presence on the interior. They have Ed Oliver, but they need someone else, someone that can get a push in the middle, and hopefully you get Von Miller returned to form or figure out something with the edge rusher group. But Derek Harmon, what a beast! I mean, it was incredible at the combine. Locked himself into a first round pick, in my opinion. And the Buffalo Bills are going to run to the podium with this guy still on the board because he fits everything they need on that defense.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only other option here would be potentially Matthew Golden. I think getting another wide receiver could be a potentially, especially at Matthew Golden, who's potentially a top 15 pick, according to some people. But defensive line, I believe, is what we went with last time. I'd have to check again. But at least it was in the conversation. And Derek Harmon is, amazing. He's a guy that can dominate the interior in pass rush or in the run game. So good pick up there. Chiefs are an interesting team. They are a team that obviously made it to the Super Bowl this past year, but have a ton of holes. They need help in a lot of places. They obviously just traded Joe Tooney. I think offensive line is going to be the play here. The question is, do we go interior or do we go outside? And I think for me, I am going to go with Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. Now, he's a guy that can probably only play on the outside, which might be an issue, which is why I was considering Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota. But I think the potential of Josh Simmons is much higher. If he didn't get injured, we're talking about him as a potential top 5 pick in this draft. So him dropping all the way to 31, you get potentially a franchise left tackle. I was also potentially thinking of his teammate, Donovan Jackson, as well. Guy that played interior, but took over for Josh Simmons as well. But again, I think it's just all potential. Josh Simmons is the guy, and he can be a franchise left tackle for you.
Yeah, and I think we forgot about him a little bit. I'm interested to see, how his medicals clear up. He wants
Yep.
to go at the pro day. We'll see if he can actually get, healthy and fully cleared by then. If he does, like this guy, we were used to be talking about him as a top 10 pick in this year's draft when
Yep.
he was healthy. So getting him here, the Chiefs are trying to bank on this pick being able to find a starting left tackle. And that's a big hole to find, especially when you're talking about blocking a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, how critical that is for your entire organization. And they're banking on landing one of these top true left tackles. And Josh Simmons still there. Makes a lot of sense for him. I like the guy out of Minnesota too. If Josh Simmons goes on the board earlier, that's who I have right now penciled in my mock.
Yep.
But I just we forgot about Josh Simmons, and I think some teams might
That's what
wait
that's
for.
what happens sometimes. People just fall to you. And
Yeah,
one team that does that a lot is the Philadelphia Eagles, as they get a lot of value players that just fall into their lap. So, Cole, to end off this mock draft 2.0, who do you have going to the defending champs?
I think corner's their biggest need, and I think we might have gone with it last time. But after getting rid of the two vets, big play Slay, they like to have them back. I don't think that that's going to happen on a different deal after cutting them. But they cut Bradbury too. They're going young on this secondary, and I still like Benjamin Morrison. I think the medicals clear up by April. Maxwell Harrison is making a big push to potentially get into that first round. Trey Amos, you'd like him. But I'm still going with my gut and keeping Benjamin Morrison in the first round and rounding it out there with the Philadelphia Eagles to fill a big need.
Yeah, I think he makes the most sense. I think we talked about this earlier this week. I was talking about it on Twitter as well. Benjamin Morrison makes the most sense. Lockdown guy, potential top 3 corner in this class. And imagine that trio: DeJean, Quinion Mitchell, and Benjamin Morrison as your cornerback trio for the next 4 years, every except DeJean, but all Quinion Mitchell and Benjamin Morrison, both with 5th-year options. I mean, a team that's already stacked on defense gets 3 guys that are going to be together for at least the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, sign me up. So, all right, that is it. Obviously, there are some notable players that got left out here in this mock. Marion Hampton didn't make it. Michael Williams didn't make it. Mike Green didn't make it in here either, as well as some others. I don't have the board up anymore. Obviously, available.
Yeah, Matthew Golden, your boy, you took first
Matthew
wide receiver
Golden.
last time.
Yep. Matthew Golden didn't make it as well. But I think when you talk about when you start hearing the conversations, I think Matthew Golden's in that conversation at 11 and 12 for the Niners and Cowboys. And then he's there for the Steelers and then for the Bills. So there's, I think, 4 potential teams that can go out and get him based on the conversations we're hearing. And we just didn't go with him. I think fit-wise, it didn't make sense. So that's why some of these other teams passed on receiver. Is you can get a guy like this in the 2nd round potentially. Trey Harris still available. Obviously, Tet McMillan dropped a lot. So, we'll see what happens. We could see him going as high as 11, but in this case, dropped out of the 1st round. So
yeah, and I'm happy we saw our combine guys rising up. Nicky Manowari going 20. What was the other one? Armand Imbo 13. Still at the same spot, but we think he's still going to continue to climb. So still some moves here that were pretty notable based on what we saw, and replace some of the guys that fell out from what we had the first time around.
Yep. And, this is going to keep changing because we're going to do a mock draft 3.0 as we get closer and closer to the draft. And then obviously the day before, we'll give a mock draft as well. So, things are going to change. Jahdae Barron might have been a little too rich at 7, but I can only dream. Will Johnson might be the guy there if they go corner, but I wanted Jahdae. So that's the end of mock draft 2.0. This will obviously be out on Thursday. Next week, we've got our final 2 positional rankings, quarterbacks and running backs, and then we get into our big boards the week after. So get ready for that. Exciting. I believe it's going to go running backs on Monday, quarterbacks on Thursday. So we will see you next week.